In this video I would like to talk about what people call love, and the video will be structured in 3 parts. In the first part I will talk about what I love from an empirical standpoint. I will just speak without thinking, try to be honest. It's kind of dumb, but yeah. In the second part I will talk about my experience of what I call Platonic love, which is intellectual love. And in the third part, I will try to define broadly what I think love is from a philosophical standpoint. And honestly, this is the most interesting part, so you can skip directly to the third part if you are interested. The first 2 parts, they are kind of personal. The third, I think, is more universal. And this video was inspired by this book, God Can't: How to Believe in God and Love After Tragedy, Abuse and Other Evils, by Tomas J. Oord. It's a theologian that I discovered on the channel Footnotes to Plato. I put the link in the description below. You can see a discussion between Matthew Siegel and this theologian. So I listed without thinking that's the first part, what I love from an empirical standpoint, what this singular empirical individual that you see has loved broadly in his life. Not everything, I just made a list rapidly, I guess. I guess that I love feeling loved by others. I love being praised. I love having friends. I love having fun. I love succeeding. I love good food, drinking beer and coffee. But recently, I have renounced most of the material pleasures. So there is also love in self-renunciation and asceticism, renouncement. So there can be a sense of self-satisfaction in renouncing that which you love. So that's a very complex psychological phenomenon, I guess, that you can find satisfaction in renouncing what you love. So it's suffering and satisfaction at the same time. So that's kind of strange. Then in the realm of video games, I loved playing the Legend of Zelda games. I think they were great. And Resident Evil games, I think they were great too. I have loved watching beautiful football when a team acts in harmony and the players understand one another, almost like telepathy. They see, they understand one another, they know how to pass the ball, when to pass, how to move, when to move, they work together. The tactics of the manager is reflected on the pitch. It's fluent, it's beautiful, it's harmonious. This is the example is Guardiola, Barcelona under Guardiola in soccer, but I guess every sport there is a beautiful way of playing the sport. The Spurs, the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA, that's another example. Then love in its purest form from an empirical standpoint was a teenage romance that I had when I was 15 and 16 with a girl who was 1 year older. These were 2 young Europeans in love. It was innocence, love, mystery, kindness, tenderness, attraction, sex eventually, beauty, humor and drama, tears, passion, romance. I was just happy to be with her, to live with her, to talk with her, to remain silent with her, to dream with her, to be together. That was pure, innocent, magical love. And that's the most intense love I ever felt. And yeah. Then I have loved good literature. it has to be in French, not because French literature is necessarily better, but in order to truly appreciate good literature, one has to understand the language very well. So I can enjoy English literature, but when the level gets too high, I cannot understand great English literature and great English poetry because the vocabulary is too complex. So for me, good, very good literature is in French. I love spiritual jokes, profound intellectual jokes, and someone like Zizek, I have loved him for his jokes at first when I was younger and dumb. Now I start to appreciate his more profound philosophical ideas. When I was a young adult, stupid, I loved the comical Zizek because he made me laugh. I love, that's still relevant today, I love to understand and to gather knowledge and to connect the dots and to understand and to comprehend, to conceptualize. I love understanding. I love Aryan beauty. What I define as Aryan beauty in the modern world would be Emma Watson, Avril Lavigne, Hayley Williams, the singer of Paramore, but there are many other examples. So I love watching, I don't know, there is partly sexual attraction, but it's just contemplation. When I look at these women, a part of me, I guess, is sexually attracted because empirically I'm a male, but it's more the will to just contemplate, just look at the beauty and appreciate the beauty of these women. And every person with an Aryan face, even if it's not as beautiful as these models of beauty, I enjoy watching beautiful faces. And males and females, I enjoy looking at beautiful males with Aryan features. And not only strictly Aryan, but most of them are Aryan, but a beautiful African person, I can acknowledge the beauty and appreciate that they are beautiful with their symmetric face and their structure. So I appreciate contemplating beauty. Yeah. I have enjoyed walking in the forest. I can no longer do this because I am partly disabled, so that's one of the enjoyments of life that I have had to renounce, but I'm okay with that. I enjoy reading good books. I enjoy being alone. I enjoy listening to music, and Nietzsche said that without music, life would be a mistake. He was maybe right. So I enjoy music, modern pop music, classical music. I just love music. I love classical art, ancient Greek classical art, the Roman Greekly inspired art and classical art in France, neoclassical art in Europe. I just love classical art. I love order, and I said Aryan order. So a part of me loves the Aryan vision of order with its excesses, I guess. Like in the 1930s. I love the idea of Aryan order. I love the United States of America. That's a very strange, fascinating country in most of its aspects. White America and non-white America. Christian America and atheistic America. I love the United States of America. I love American culture. I just love this country. Maybe I don't know enough about the country, and if I knew more, I would not love. But empirically, I love the United States of America. I love Germany. I love German philosophy, and I love reading German philosophy. I love logically ordered, well-structured books. I love reading good, logically structured books, and that's why I love reading German philosophy, because usually it's very structured and very ordered and very logical and very clear, and it's difficult, but it's logically structured. I love the idea that I might be a cause of joy in others or for others. That's one of the things that I love the most. The idea that I might cause joy in others. I love this idea. And finally, I love feeling good about myself. I love feeling courageous, virtuous, kind, compassionate, honest, and yeah, I love feeling good about myself. And in order to feel good about myself, I feel that I have to try to do good for others. So the last two ideas are connected. When I think of myself as being potentially a cause of joy or admiration or satisfaction or help for another, I feel good about myself. So I need the other to feel good about myself. So that's what I have loved empirically throughout my life. Now, the second part. I will talk about Platonic love. To simplify to the utmost, Plato says basically that the body is attracted by attractive bodies. So, to simplify, a male is attracted by beautiful females. But Plato says it's a trick. It's a cunning of reason before Hegelian reason, if that's possible. No, seriously. What he means is that we think that we are attracted by physical beauty through sexual attraction. A male in his late teenage years and his adult life is, if he's heterosexual, usually he's attracted by heterosexual, sexually mature females. And Plato says basically that's a trick, that the purpose of sexual attraction and physical attraction is to elevate the soul towards the contemplation of the beauty of the soul of the other, and eventually the cognitive beauty of the mind of the other. So sexual attraction is a trick, a deception, which pushes us towards the contemplation of intellectual cognitive beauty. I simplify Plato, maybe I transform, but that's the idea. The idea of Platonic love is the love of the mind and the soul, but mostly the mind of the other, and the contemplation of intellectual beauty. And I have had an experience of what I could call Platonic love. I have already told this story when I started this channel in 2019, but then I maybe I deleted the videos, or I don't know, but I will repeat. In 2018, I followed a YouTube channel named Stell Bell. It was an alt-right teenage girl. She was 16 years old. I was 25 years old back then. And I followed her channel because she had kind of provocative but interesting ideas about femininity, the right wing, etc. So I followed the channel for the intellectual content. And in May 2018, a very strange event occurred. I was not particularly attracted by her because first I thought that she was too young, and also because she was not particularly physically attractive. She was not ugly, but she was not very beautiful. She was average from a physical standpoint. But something happened in the month of May. I had followed her channel, basically sparsely, watch a video once in a while, but I was not a strong follower. But suddenly I started to watch some of her videos, and I understood her ideas, the intellectual content that she developed, some of the ideas that she expressed in her videos, and I realized that she had very profound, very Hegelian, what I call Hegelian ideas, which are speculative ideas, very deep and very profound and spiritual ideas. And when I understood the depth of her ideas, all of a sudden, by a strange process, I fell in love. And it was Platonic love. I fell in love with her minds, with the content of her mind. And all of a sudden, I felt attracted to her. Because I understood her mind, I became attracted by her as a person. So the cognitive process led me to fall in love with her. And I remember very vividly, I felt embarrassed because she was 16 and I was 25, because I felt that I was ugly and unworthy, and I felt ashamed and embarrassed. And I said to myself, I am sorry that I fell in love with you, but now I will try to abolish my love for you. I will try to elevate myself in love with you by transcending the attraction that I feel and by just focusing on the spiritual aspect. I'm kind of proud of this, because the expression I will elevate myself in love with you, it's a pretty good expression for a foreign person to use the English language to make puns like this. I'm quite proud of myself on this one. So sorry. And I became obsessed by her, because she inspired me so much. And for about 2 or 3 months, I watched all of her videos. I became interested in her, the music that she loved, the books and the authors that she loved. And she helped me understand so much about women in general, and about many aspects of life. And I was passionately in love because of a cognitive process. And she was very funny. She had kind of a strong character. She was kind. She was emotional also. She was very, very smart and spiritual. And the amount of intelligence, I don't know if she had a very high IQ. Probably she had an above average IQ, but it's not the quantitative intelligence. It's the depth of ideas. And she a 16-year-old girl with such a tremendous intelligence. She was, how should I explain this? There are intellectually gifted people with IQs of above 140. She was not in this category. It's not, like I said, it's not IQ intelligence. It's she was intellectually brilliant without realizing how much brilliant she was. So she was kind of too brilliant to understand how brilliant she was. And I loved her intensely because of her mind. And she made me think of the myth of Athena, the Greek goddess of reason and intelligence, the patron goddess of the city of Athens. And the mythology says that Athena was born fully armed, coming straight out of Zeus's head, the king of the gods. So she was born directly out of the head of Zeus. And when I had my God experience in August 2018, namely when I believed that I had become God by entering the mind of God, I believed that I, not as an empirical individual, but as a mind, that I had created her, because I could read her mind so well. She was... I could read her mind. And I sincerely believe that I had created her somehow, not as an empirical individual, but that by identifying with the mind of God, I said to myself that God had created this girl. That's what I thought. And so, still in the realm of Platonic love, I love women whose mind I can read. And those that I can read the mind the most are in the right-wing pagan community. I love intelligent, educated, funny women. So what I love about women as an empirical individual, when I see a beautiful woman, I feel sexually attracted, because these are the determinations of my biological body. I'm a male in his late 20s, so I feel sexual attraction and lust for women when I see attractive women. But from a cognitive standpoint, I love being able to read and understand the mind of women So I love women intellectually, and I love passionately, I love women who have a good sense of humor. Comical women who are funny because they are spiritual, I love them. I can't help but fall in love with comical women. And I can give examples in modern pop culture, because cultural Hegelianism tries to use pop culture to explain philosophical ideas. Women like Rihanna, Kesha, Lady Gaga, Avril Lavigne, Skylar Grey, in some of their songs, they have a very profound, very comical aspect. And I love understanding their humor. And yeah, I love feminine, spiritual, good humor, I guess. So, yeah. And it can only be understood from a philosophical standpoint. And then, still in the realm of Platonic love, when it comes to men, when I can read the mind and understand the mind of other men, the process is identical. It's to recognize, to understand, to grasp the faculty, the mental determinations and the content of the mind of another. But I wouldn't call this love. When I understand the mind of an other man, I feel admiration and respect and awe, but I wouldn't call this love. But can there be admiration without love? Can there be admiration without love, or are they mixed together? That's a subtle distinction, I don't know. But when I understand the ideas of a man, I admire him. Is this a form of love? I don't know. That's too complex for me at this point. But I would say I admire him, I respect him, and yeah. And just an anecdote, the man that I have admired the most is, of course, Hegel. When I discovered really Hegel, I already vaguely knew about the man and the philosopher named Hegel when I was a Marxist, but when I really discovered Hegel, it was at the end of January, beginning of February 2018. And when I understood his ideas, some of his ideas, I felt such a tremendous admiration. Hegel was my hero. For me, he was the hero of Europe, and I was passionately in love with Europe at this time. So he was the savior of Europe. He was the greatest thinker ever. I felt so much admiration for Hegel. Between February until June 2018, so for 5 months, I had so much admiration for Hegel. And then in July and August 2018, it went beyond admiration, because I realized that Hegel was way too smart, and I still admired him, but I wondered, but how could he be so smart? It kind of became strange. And then in August 2018, I had my God experience, and then my relationship with Hegel changed, I guess. I still respect Hegel, but our relationship has become more complicated. Now, the third part, what is love from a philosophical standpoint? That's a definition which might change, but these are the ideas that I have about love, how I could define love. In my view, which might change, but if I had to define what is love for me, it's to find your own mind outside of yourself, to recognize your mind outside of yourself, to have your own mind reflected in another. So, in other words, to be oneself outside of oneself. So my view of love is that you love yourself through the mediation of another. You think that you love another, but actually you love yourself through the other. And when we think about love, we think about a love, sexual attraction and romance between man and woman. But the other form of love that people spontaneously think about is the love of parents for their children. And here the idea is that a parent sees in his child or in his children a genetic and biological copy of himself or herself externalized. It is their own biological life made other, different than themselves. They copy their own biological life in another. So they do not recognize necessarily their mind, but they recognize their biological determinations in another. And also an idea about, so that's why I said the love of a parent for his children is the love of being oneself outside of oneself, to have your biological self externalized outside of yourself. That's why most parents love their children. And then I wrote, the more, here we are, I evolve in the cognitive aspect. The more we love something in common, the more we love one another. Eventually, it's not always true, but for instance, if I love chocolate and if you love chocolate, our common love is very poor because chocolate is a chemical determination, and the love that one feels for chocolate is just the love of the release of chemical reaction within the brain which cause pleasure. So when people say they love chocolate, they love the pleasure, the sweetness, the taste of chocolate, which is just chemical reactions within their brain. So if I love chocolate and if you love chocolate, and if this is the only thing that we have in common, we will probably not love one another very much. Maybe we will even be in conflict with one another if there's only one piece of chocolate and we are two. So that might cause problem. But if I say, if two Americans, American patriots, say, I love America, the American Constitution, I'm an American patriot, and if another says, I love America also, I love American patriotism, their mutual love will be very strong. And they will be even willing to fight and eventually die for one another. That's why patriots are willing to give their life for the love of their country. So the love of one's country, I chose America, but I could choose any country, between two different persons is very strong. And they can also be in conflict with one another. If the vision, your patriotic vision is different from that of another, then you can create conflict and internal conflicts. But if two minds share the same vision of the love of one's country, be it America or any other country, then they will love one another through the mediation of the love of the country, and they will respect one another as reciprocal citizens and patriots of the same country. Then, in the realm of sports, which is a form of art, so in the encyclopedia it's higher than objective spirit because it's partly absolute spirit. So I'm not sure how to classify, but if I say I love Guardiola, or what's his name, Greg Popovich, if you want an American equivalent, you can say Greg Popovich. So if I love the football produced by the football teams of Guardiola, and if you love Guardiola, we have a lot in common because we appreciate the same kind of artistic expression and spiritual expression. And I guess that in the NBA, two fans, whatever their favorite team, if they can love basketball and appreciate good basketball, they will acknowledge that the kind of collective interplay developed by the teams by Greg Popovich. I don't know much about NBA, but hey, I simplify. I think he's the representative of fluid, passive basketball game. Two lovers of good basketball can love one another and respect one another for the reciprocal admiration that they have for the kind of basketball developed by the teams trained and managed by Popovich. That's an example. if two intellectuals share a common love for instance, 17th century English poetry. I know almost nothing about 17th century English poetry, but let us imagine two scholars or two intellectuals or two Englishmen who have a profound love for 17th century English poetry. They will have a reciprocal, mutual love for one another because their mind will be filled with the same content. And even if one is a conservative and the other is a Tory and Whig, I don't know how it's in England, one is a leftist and the other is a right-winger, if they really love 17th century English poetry, they might respect one another beyond their political oppositions. That's a possibility. And finally, in my view, or I could say that two Christians who love the Bible or love Christ or love their church, they might love one another intensely as being reciprocal Christians. But in my view, the highest love would be the highest form of spirituality, which for me is philosophy. And the highest form of love that I can imagine is two people who share the same love for the same philosophical ideas. And eventually, in my view, most, if not all philosophical ideas are in some way or another Hegelian. So the most intense intellectual love one could think of, in my view, would be the love between two Hegelians. And that's what I am trying to promote on this channel, to convert people to Hegel's philosophy. But since Hegel's philosophy is the philosophy of negation, there would probably be conflicts also. Not probably, it's certainly that there will be conflicts, but there is also love in mutual self-recognition and And now I will continue to develop on this idea of having one's mind externalized in the other by the example of teachers, school teachers. Some students or former students believe that there are bad teachers who just want to bully their pupils or their students. They just want to annoy them or to give them bad grades or to be nasty or to be annoying or whatever. But what a teacher, any teacher wants is to see his own mind, the content of his own mind, reflected in the mind of his students. So a teacher wants his students to succeed. Even if he doesn't seem to want to, he wants to, because he's determined to want to have his own mind reflected in the mind of others. And there are teachers who only love good students, only the intelligent students, because they think, I will not succeed in making my ideas reflected in the mind of the mediocre and the low IQ or low potential students. So there are teachers who only care about the good students because unconsciously they acknowledge that it's a lot easier to see one's own ideas reflected in the mind of good students than in the mind of others. But there are also teachers who love mediocre and below average students because they see in them the potential for improvement, and they want unconsciously to have the idea of themselves as being the cause of intellectual improvement and development and elevation in the mediocre students, and they can find their own satisfaction in thinking of themselves as having helped the others to improve themselves. And precisely about help, when we help an other, when we give money to charity or to a beggar, we want unconsciously to see recognition in the eyes of the other. We want the other to be grateful to us, and if we do not give directly, if we give anonymous gifts to a charity, we want to have a good image of ourselves, to associate our gift, our help, with the idea of a self-worth. We want to say, I am a good person because I sacrifice a part of myself, my money, which is my time and my work, to help others, and I want to feel good about myself. And also the idea of exteriorizing one's mind. Let us take the example of a baker, someone who bakes bread. When he bakes bread or cakes, in a way, his own mind, through his work, is exteriorized and given the presence of an external object, in this case, a piece of bread or a cake. And so the baker, when he makes bread, he creates, or the cook, when he cooks, when he produces a meal, or a piece of bread or anything, he creates, he exteriorizes himself, and he recognizes himself in an object. The piece of bread is the product of the mind of the baker, who has transformed matter, flour, water, salt, etc., into an object through his work. And he can find satisfaction in recognizing himself in the product, the object, but also find satisfaction in the satisfaction of his customers, to associate his idea of himself as being productive, useful, competent, in finding the satisfaction of his customers. And here we arrive at the question of stupid, debilitating jobs. These are jobs in which the worker cannot create. He cannot recognize himself in the product of his work because his work is too limited or fragmented. That's the example of a factory worker as opposed to a craftsman. A craftsman sees himself fully reflected in his product, in his work, so he finds his own mind outside of himself, whereas the factory worker with the division of labor, or the 9-to-5 guy who works in an office, who is just a stupid administrative job, his job is fragmented, so he doesn't see himself fully reflected. That's why those who have boring jobs, they must find satisfaction in another aspect of life, the idea of being a good citizen, a productive member of society, a taxpayer, a father, a husband, a friend, a member of a football community or a sports team or whatever. So they must find satisfaction in other aspects. But there are people who are lucky enough to find satisfaction in their own work. I'm not saying that all craftsmen or creators or artists are happy, and some of them are unhappy, but at least they can exteriorize the content of their mind by producing and creating. And that's why the right-wing traditionalist view wants to encourage craftsmanship instead of industrial labor, because of this idea. And then we come to the question of God. People say, some of them say, that God is love. But my view is that God loves humans and himself eventually to the extent that he can recognize his own creation. God loves to the extent that he recognizes himself in the world. And I will talk about myself. I made experiences, intellectual experiences, in which I thought of myself as having entered the mind of God. I thought of myself as having become, momentarily at least, God. And have I thought myself as being the creator of reality? I abstractly thought in August 2018 that reality existed because of my consciousness. So in a way that I had created reality, but I did not consciously thought that I had actually created anything. But there are 3 exceptions to this day. The first is Stella, the girl that I mentioned in the second part. I genuinely believed that I had created her, not my empirical individual self, that would be nonsense, but that my mind, while identifying with God, had created, I don't know how, but this girl. And then a few weeks ago, I watched a video by Lady Gaga. And I said to myself, if I were the creator, if I were a conflicted creator, I would have created Lady Gaga to express my own conflicts and to try to transcend my inner torment in an artistic and aesthetic expression. So I said to myself, if I were the creator, I would have created Lady Gaga in my own image. And finally, there have been moments in my life when I thought about hell, and I said to myself, I could create hell for myself. So these are the three creations that I have recognized, or thought that I have recognized. So yeah. And then I wrote that you can be embarrassed by what you created. Anyone can be embarrassed by his own creations. And the difficulty is to love your creations, even in their problematic, embarrassing aspects. And I would like to say that when you recognize yourself, you recognize your own mind, and eventually you love yourself, and you love yourself in the other. Yeah, and about this idea of creating sometimes embarrassing creations, I would like to quote the lyrics of a song by Eminem, Guts Over Fear, and I will end up the video on these lyrics. And I will put the link to the song. He says, it just breaks my heart to look at all the pain I caused. Here I go recycling the same old song, but I would rather make Not Afraid 2 than another motherfucking We Made You. So that's Eminem admitting that We Made You was not his best song, but he accepted that's part of his artistic creative process. And yeah. And I don't want to seem indulgent when I discuss my lows and my highs, my demise and my uprise. Pray to God. I just opened enough eyes later on, gave you the supplies and the tools to hopefully use that'll make you strong enough to lift yourself up when you feel like I felt. Because I can't explain to you all how dang exhausted my legs felt just having to balance my dang self. It's better expressed when it is sung by Eminem, but these are very profound lyrics. And yeah, that's what I had to say about love as I envision love at this moment in my development.